days after another Election Day rejection of the Tea Party candidates, look who's back. Sarah Palin, the queen of the Tea Party, was out in Iowa this weekend, where she compared the federal debt to slavery, insisting the comparison isn't racist.
Our free stuff today is being paid for by taking money from our children and borrowing from China. When that note comes due, and this isn't racist, so yeah, try it anyway. This isn't racist, but it's going to be like slavery when that note is due, right? We are going to be beholden to a foreign master.
Our federal debt is like slavery. Slavery was horrific, vile, a vile practice that was explicitly based on race. So it's hard to avoid sounding racist when you make comparisons like that. This kind of talk has no place in our political debate. But Palin doesn't seem to care. She only cares about throwing red meat to the right wing.
The president, now broadcasting his ShamWow-style infomercials, the far left stifling, strangling, shackling agenda. Leaders who would exempt themselves from the laws that they force on the rest of us, that's dictatorship.
A dictatorship? This stuff with a rabid right-wing audience, but not with the rest of America. In swing states, Palin's approval rating now stands at just 26%. 26%. But here's the thing. Republicans in Congress have been having their cues taken from her for years. In fact, they sound just like Sarah Palin. Listen to how they repeat her talking points.
Of course there are death panels in there.
It'll be very unpleasant if the death panels go into effect.
Obamacare in our businesses and our individual lives, and that will suffocate enterprise and industry.
Threat of Obamacare continuing to hang over our economy like a wet blanket.
Calling out any who would use our military, our vets, as pawns in a political game.
Our veterans should be above politics. Enough games.
Barack Obama is a socialist. He believes in socialism.
He wants to implement his socialist programs, and that's all he knows.
It's hard not to see the pattern, and that's the real problem here. It's one thing for Sarah Palin to have low approval ratings, but the Tea Party's approval rating is even worse. Just 21% nationwide, a record low. And the Republican Party's approval rating is also at a record low, 24%. It's time for the GOP to reject Palin's brand of extremism instead of copying it. Until then, they'll just keep walking and waking up after elections, wondering why they're losing. Joining me now are Joan Walsh and Cynthia Tucker. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Rob.
Good to be here, Reverend.
Cynthia, let me go to you first. Why weren't Republicans comparing the federal debt to slavery when we had GOP presidents with a federal debt?
You know, Reverend Al, the extreme right wing of the GOP has certain verbal tics that they just can't seem to leave alone, even though these tics always get them in trouble. There are certain things they should know by now they just should not discuss. They should never discuss rape, because if they do, they'll say something stupid. They should never discuss slavery, because if they do, they'll say something stupid. As you said earlier,
right,
slavery was a horrific institution, nothing else like it in the history of the country. Debt does not allow a slave to legally rape his property. Debt does not allow a slave master. Debt does not allow a slave master to take away your children. On top of which, the federal debt is actually falling. So Sarah Palin is wrong on all counts.
And the federal debt has been falling every year for the last 5 years. Joan, let me ask you, You know, Sarah Palin was on the Today Show just this morning, and she explicitly rejected the idea that Republicans need to temper their extremism. Listen to this.
If you look at the results of the election, isn't the message to the Tea Party that the middle ground, not the far right, is the most fertile ground for upcoming elections?
You know, when you stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get hit on both sides of the road.
You know, isn't Palin really driving the party of the Republican Party into a ditch with this kind of stuff?
Hey, look, Reverend Al, Sarah Palin actually is the mainstream of the Republican Party. She really is. We don't want to think that. We want to give them more credit, and we bend over backwards pointing to people like Chris Christie, who is severely conservative but isn't quite as nasty about it. But she's playing a game here that's become increasingly popular. You know, if you want, first of all, to my white brothers and sisters, when you're tempted to preface something by saying this isn't racist, maybe you should check yourself and think about it, because it probably is. And second of all, if you, she put on a clinic in white privilege, because really, white privilege is many things, but one of those things is letting yourself stay ignorant enough to use slavery as a metaphor for something you don't like about government. As Cynthia said, the debt does not let someone rape their slaves. The debt does not come and take her child Piper out of her arms. So, you know, this is the white grievance industry, where she does a really fun thing in there, you know, where she's like, oh, go ahead and try, because being told that you shouldn't use slavery as a metaphor, that's discrimination. That's racist against white people. My God, what are you guys doing to us?